My name is Drew Waldron, and I am on with transformative inclusion expert and award-winning poet and rapper, Dr. Ome Congo Dibinga. Dr. Dibinga, it's great to sit down with you. How are you doing this morning?
Great. Excited to be here.
You wear so many different hats professionally. When your work is so multifaceted, how do you introduce your career to those who may not be familiar with your work?
Well, my goal is very simple. And though I do straddle different areas, being a professor, being a motivational speaker, a rapper, a poet, the main goal is simple and it's all under the same umbrella. How can we create communities where everybody can feel celebrated and not tolerated? And so if you listen to my music, you'll hear that theme. You step into my classroom, you hear that theme. I'm speaking in front of 30, 40, 50,000 people, you're going to hear that theme. And so my belief is that you have to bring the same message to audiences, different audiences, in the way that they are ready to receive it. So I could be talking to a middle school group of students, or I could be at one of the biggest corporations, a Microsoft or an Apple or some other place, but the message is the same because fundamentally, as human beings, we all want to feel that way.
When you were first starting out, what led you to inclusion and belonging, not only as a professional, but as an artist?
Well, growing up, in Boston, Massachusetts, and growing up with this name, I didn't feel welcome. And people would bully us, they would call us names, throw rocks at us, beat us up, whether it was classmates, people in our community, even some of my teachers. And so just growing up, I never really felt like I belonged. And so my life was a situation of exclusion. When I speak to a lot of younger groups in some of their schools, we talk about things like suicide and, feeling like you didn't want to check out, like you wanted to check out and didn't belong. Like I've been there, I've been in those spaces. And once I started to learn that my experience is as American as anybody else's, my experience is as human as anybody else's, that started particularly around like the high school time where I started to realize that I could speak to people in a way that could celebrate our differences, but also let people know that we have more things that are in common than we do that are separate. And once I started doing that again, I was speaking to kids, community centers, prisons. But then as I got older and more mature in terms of the speaking, that led to churches, associations, corporations, even speaking at the United Nations, in terms of doing this work, because fundamentally that's where we all are. But that's how I got into this work, was because of the exclusion I experienced as a young person.
My gosh, what a spread from the UN to a classroom. That's unbelievable. I wanted to ask, those conversations, they could be incredibly, incredibly heavy. How do you first approach those difficult conversations with young minds?
I approach them in the same way that I approach them with older people. We have to, in my work, we have to ask three essential questions. How does knowledge of my own culture and history affect the work that I do? Question number two, how does my knowledge about the culture and history of others affect the work that I do? And number three, with this knowledge, how can I help to build communities where everybody can be celebrated and not tolerated? Most people fail in these conversations because they start with question number two, which is basically saying, what do I need to know about them? What do I need to know about those people, whoever they are? When you do that, you assume that there's nothing wrong with you and how you think. So the way that we have to do this is we have to check ourselves first. We have to ask ourselves, have I been taught any biases about a particular group? Have I been told any stories about people? Challenge those. And then once you do that, then you can start building your knowledge. You might have to do a refresh. I've talked to so many places, so many people where people have said, well, I thought this about this group until I was 15 and I went to visit this country, or I was 20 and I learned more about this religion, because they had to break the cycle of everything they were taught beforehand by people who are less informed or disinformed. So it has to start with you. You have to be willing to do the work to challenge your own biases and stereotypes. And then that way it's going to make you want to go on a path to have these deeper conversations with others.
Very, very well said. A really big part of your work has you working with young students in an educational context. Now,
Yes.
what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that schools are facing this year?
I'm at the university level now, but most of my life I taught on the K to 12 level, even as an educator, before I was even getting out there as a speaker. So I'm seeing this from all ends, and I'm, raising children, one who's about to be in college, one who's about to be a junior in high school, and one who's about to be a fourth grader. So I feel like I can speak to this. So one of the major challenges students are facing is this issue of loneliness. There's this idea of nobody's really speaking to them in their physical spaces. And so that's why many of them are turning to social media. And we're seeing that so many stories and studies have come out that have connected the suicide issues, depression, all of these things to the rise in cell phone usage and social media access. Kids are and young people are retreating to other worlds to live in certain areas, to live a life that they're not living in real life. That has also led to radicalization in many different areas of our society as well, because people are going down a rabbit hole of just looking at, the algorithms are going to feed you what they think you want to see. So they're going down a rabbit hole of seeing so many things of only tailored towards their opinion. So I think that's one challenge. Related to that is that kids are not really building a lot of the social skills because they don't have to interact in ways that we were forced to growing up. I think that's a problem. I think another challenge that they have is they don't know how to process information. They don't really know how to determine whether a website that they're seeing is real. And it's only gotten worse. And a lot of adults don't really know how to do that now because you have these things with deep fakes and artificial intelligence and all of these things. And so a lot of our young people nowadays don't really know how to discern that. Studies have come out showing that I don't know if you asked me about one, but I know that there are several.
Keep going, please.
Okay, a lot of our young people are getting their news of the day from social media, from TikTok, from what people are dropping in the comments. They don't know if sources are legit or if they're arguing with like a bot that was created to. So those are some of the challenges, and we as adults have failed in our ability to navigate that with them. And I would say, lastly, a lot of them just don't have a strong knowledge of history. And as the great James Baldwin said, if you don't understand what happened behind you, you can't understand what's happening around you. And so I think that if they had a deeper sense of history, they could fully have a deeper understanding of what's happening in this world today and how to respond to it. And then you have other issues like climate change and school culture in terms of violence and school shootings, things that are threatening their safety on a daily basis. So in short, you can see why it's harder to be a young person in this time than any other period as it relates to the societal influences that they have to deal with.
I couldn't agree.
Online bullying, for example, it doesn't just stop when you leave school. It continues through social media.
Absolutely. You are 100%. I think you are 100% correct. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that in the rampant social media use, you see these seeds being planted for division that lasts long into adulthood. Now, one of your main topics is unity. And my God, what a divided world we currently live in. But when you give your unity-based talks, whether it's to a school or to a corporation, how do you approach that conversation?
The focus has to be, I ask people to, rather than focus on the 97 things that you disagree on, that you hate the other person for, or that you're mad about, let's start with one or two or three things that we can all agree to. Something like, we believe that every human should be treated with respect and dignity. I'm hard pressed to find that most people, and even I don't attach a religion to it or a political party or, I don't even, as a native Bostonian, I don't even, condemn Lakers fans and, curse them or anything like that. But, it's just like, can we just start there? Okay. So if people need to be treated with basic human dignity, what does that look like? And again, what I have found is that when you start the conversation in a generalized space, as opposed to, let's just say, politics, Democrat, Republican, like Democrat, Republican for people now, those are like trigger words now for people. It's like, oh my gosh, you supported that guy, you hugged that guy, you donate. And so it's like, we're not starting there. We could talk racial things that people are talking about, political issues, wars going on. You mentioned this group or that group, people automatically go to their corners. You can't start there. You have to start with basic conversations about what does human dignity look like? And in that space, how can we start to build that for people in our corporate spaces? There are people of different backgrounds. You read the diversity surveys and they don't feel like they belong. Okay, what can we do to have a basic core of respect in our organization, in our schools? People feel like they don't belong. Well, what's the thing that we can do to basically start having that conversation? Maybe we need to look at their curriculum and see how many people are excluded in the history books that people are reading. Maybe we need to look at the representation in our schools. Do all of the teachers look the same? Do they represent a particular demographic, whether it's gender-wise, racially, age-based, whatever? Those types of things help people see something different. That's how I started. Look, my thoughts about the world are very much visible. You can find what I think of about anything. But this leads to the second point. We cannot take other people's opinions and just condemn them and shoot them down and tell them that they're worthless, they're this, they're that, they're racist, they're sexist, they're this or whatever. We have two ears and one mouth, and I encourage people to use them in proportion. I don't have it all figured out, and I'm trying to work with people to figure it out, because most people, they just want to be heard. They just want to be felt. And when they feel like that's not happening, they can respond in ways that are counterproductive, not only to the interests of other people, but to their own self-interest. So that's where I start.
That is an incredibly human approach to it, and I love it. One of the last questions we always ask in these interviews, and feel free to answer it in however context you'd like. What advice do you have for young people?
My advice for young people is you have to remember that whatever we are dealing with as a society today, it was worse before. If you go back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it doesn't mean that what is happening now is not significant. What it means is that we as a society have a track record of putting the tools together to confront the challenges ahead of us. So whatever you're dealing with right now as a young person, you can find examples throughout history, recent history, or further back, of people who came together and fought to make change, to make progress, to make society better for everyone. So don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. Sure, we have new wheels, new tools like social media and all of these things, but the practices that you're going to need to use to come together, they're the same. The practices that you're going to need to do to make people realize that you need to be celebrated, not tolerated, it's all the same. And lastly, if you're dealing with things in your personal life, all of what I've talked about before is public issues, but in your personal life, you have to remember, in this world, you have to ask for help, not because you're weak, but because you want to remain strong. There is no reason for you to feel like you need to go it alone. When I was going through my worst as a teenager, and I went to a conference and I heard somebody say that, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, those were one of the phrases that really changed my life. If you stay the course, it will get better. If you believe that you're worth it, it will get better. And surround yourself with people who support you and represent where you want to go. And that's how you can make the rest of your life the best of your life. There are lots of challenges you're dealing with that I didn't have to deal with today, but because of so many things that people have fought for you to have a better life, your future is also brighter than any other time in human history. And sometimes we just need to do the work needed to remove those blinders to allow us to see that greatness. And you have to do whatever it takes for you to get to that point. And that's what I'm here to help you do.
Wow. Dr. Dibinga, thank you so much for sharing your life and your work in this conversation. Before we started recording, we said that one of the best ways we could end this was with one of your motivational poems, and I truly cannot think of a better way to conclude this conversations. I would love to hear what you have.
Yes, this poem, I wrote a book called Grow Towards Your Greatness, and this is a poem of the same name. They say that greatness is a choice, but what have you chosen? You've been frozen in time and broken in mind. For too long, the same song playing in your head. Living in breath, but better off dead. But who said that you didn't have the power? Who said this is not your hour? You've been showered with a steady stream of words that kill your dreams. But since you're still breathing, then someone has lied to you, tried to deny you of your own potential inside you. If you just decide to, let no one deride you. Don't even let them get beside you as you unearth the new you. Stop listening to naysayers and decide to do you. No more pity parties, sob stories, and boo-hoos. If no one told you that you're great, then let me be the first to. If you develop the thirst to drink from Faith's fountain, you'll develop the might to move mountains. You see, we remove tons of dirt to find 1 ounce of gold. So I ask you to remove tons of hurt and just uncover 1 ounce of your soul. You'll set yourself on a true path of excellence, getting out of your passenger seat and driving your own car, reaching for the moon, but maybe only landing among the stars. You see, you have greatness inside you, but you must choose to be great. Blaze a path of excellence, leaving fear in your wake. All you need is already inside you. You just must believe in yourself. Grow towards your greatness and discover your true wealth.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. That will conclude our conversation with Dr. Dibinga. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.